Hey guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome back to another day in my life. So for today's video, I am going to be doing lots of cooking because I hear you guys, you want to see more food, so I'm sharing with you what I ate. I made 2 different kinds of sourdough cookies, I cooked up some soup, I made some egg salad on my sourdough bagels, and I'm sharing with you how I make a vanilla cloud drink, which I've gotten a lot of questions on. Also, I'm dropping in the video to just chat with you guys for a bit because I've gotten lots of questions about like my diet, quote unquote, so I'm going to share that with you. And then last thing before we hop right in, I want to give a special shout out to my patrons. If you haven't checked out my Patreon or you don't know what it is, it's basically a separate site where I upload exclusive content. I've really covered a wide range of topics over the last couple of years, so if you want to check that out, I will have it linked down below. And thank you so much to everyone who has gone over there and supported me. It means a lot. So with all of that being said, let's hop right in. All right, so speaking of food, we are starting off with some oatmeal. Now, I have not really ever cooked up steel cut, or I believe they're also called Irish oats. So I did that on this day though, and I had actually soaked my oats overnight. So I drained out the water and then I put the oats on the stovetop in a little pot with some milk and allowed that to cook up. And while my oats were cooking up, I cut up some pecans. You guys probably know by now that pecans are one of my favorite nuts, although I did recently buy pistachios because I want to do some experimenting with pistachios and different things. Anyways, I cooked up my oatmeal and I also cooked up my pecans in a pan after I had chopped them up. Pecans, I don't know. And then I put a little coconut oil, and then once those had toasted, as well as a little bit of salt, once they had got a little toasty, I put in some maple syrup and I stirred that around and let that reduce so it could get sticky. I also put a little bit of this Julie's cinnamon date syrup directly into my oatmeal while it was cooking. And then just to add a little bit more fat into the mix and slow down like my carb spike, I put some butter into the mix as well. So the weather on this day was so beautiful. I feel like that's mostly what I've been showing you guys lately, but it's very exciting because we've had so much rain and cold weather. So these days are just very exciting. And I actually think I uploaded my last video in the wrong order. And this was actually the first day that we got to make our way to the beach. By the way, these farm animals, hi little sheep, hi goat, were out playing on our drive to the lake. So I was pretty excited because on this day we went to a different lake than in my last video. There are so many lakes in North Idaho. Like, I think it's one of the most lake dense places in the country. So you may get to see me go to a lot of different places, but this lake on this day was almost completely empty, which was kind of fun and also kind of a surprise because we had had so many rainy days. I thought for sure on this warm day there would be lots of moms out with their kids at the beach, but we really only saw like 2 moms there. Pretty much it was an empty beach, and we had a lot of fun walking around the dock and sticking our feet in the water and hanging out on our blanket, and it was just beautiful. So the other thing that we got to do on this day was plant our garden. Now, we've planted a few things ahead of time. You guys know we have garlic growing and raspberries, but there's all this space we have with nothing growing in it. And so on this day, we wanted to get some stuff planted. Now, next year, God willing, we will be a little more prepared and we will start seedlings indoors. But this year we were not ready for that. And so we decided to just plant seeds directly into the ground. And we only did that for the ones that like mentioned you could direct sow. There's a lot of seeds that say that you pretty much have to start them inside, especially based on where we live so far north. You really need to start them inside ahead of time. I had cookies going in the oven while I was pulling out my seeds. These are sourdough with pecans, white chocolate chips, dates, and also a little bit of regular chocolate chips, and it was delicious. So we made our way outside, and Dan, as you can see, started working on pulling up different plants and different weeds. We have a lot of work, a lot of work ahead of us in our garden, guys, but it was really nice on this day to get to make so much progress. Also, the bushes that Dan pulled, unfortunately, were blueberry bushes, but they're very small and they weren't going to produce much fruit. And so we just decided to pull them out and utilize the space for something else. So I decided I wanted to plant 4 different kinds of beans, and we actually have more beans than that, but I decided to just start with 4 and then do some flowers in the front of the beds. So I dug my little holes and planted. By the way, these were the flowers that I decided to plant. Now this all feels like a giant experiment. You guys know I'm a fake homesteader. I only started gardening a couple years ago, and now we completely moved to a totally different growing climate, growing zone. And so I feel like I basically have no idea what's even gonna happen in our garden or what's gonna work. But I do know from gardening before that life wants to live. So it's definitely worth just planting and just seeing what happens. Now, getting into more of an extensive cookie recipe, I decided I wanted to make these brownie sourdough chocolate cookies. Now we're gonna pause this because at this point I got a package full of my new skincare. Guys, I was so excited about this because I've been out of like proper skincare for like 6 to 8 months. So this line is basically like a saturated fat skincare line. This was created by Noelle Covery, who ironically you'll see in this video, I share one of her drinks, a vanilla cloud drink. She's a person that's well known in the pro-metabolic community, and she came out with a skincare line. I debated getting it for a long time, and so I was very excited on this day to finally receive my products. I will have to let you guys know in a couple of months how I like them, but I will say so far it feels amazing on my face. So back to the cookies. I started off by putting my butter in the bowl that was above a steaming pot of water. This is called using like a double broiler basically, but this is like the janky way. And I melted down my butter and my chocolate and just kept heating it up till it was all smooth. Then, as you can see, I had professionally divvied up all of my ingredients, guys. So I put in my regular cane sugar, brown sugar, an egg yolk, my sourdough discard from the fridge. So basically it's just fermented grains. And then I mixed all of that together. Then I added in my butter and chocolate concoction. Then I did something I've never done, and I sifted my flour and my cocoa through this, I don't even know, sifter, I guess you would say. I've never done that before. I was really nervous, but I also felt very professional. And then I stirred everything up. Now, I will say, spoiler alert, these cookies are intense and they're okay. They turned out okay by themselves. But also, spoiler alert, with some vanilla ice cream, it takes these cookies over the top, and weirdly it kind of like tones down the sweet taste, like the chocolate taste. That's the thing. I love chocolate, and these were just like very chocolatey. Anyways, just wanted to throw that out there. With vanilla ice cream, they're bomb. So I cooked them in the oven, and a few minutes before they were done cooking, I pulled them out and I did this little technique that the blog post I was following said to do, and that was to smack the pan on the counter to help them kind of flatten down and supposedly create more of like a brownie crinkle top. Then I ended up putting a little bit of Maldon salt on top because I do that with pretty much everything. And then I baked them for a few minutes until they were complete. And as you can see, they look beautiful. They turned out to be really tasty. I will link the recipe that I was following down below, but if you want to check out my Pinterest, that's pretty much where I get most of my cooking inspiration. Hi guys, guys, so I am bebopping into this video because I want to talk to you a little bit face to face. I've actually been getting a few questions about some dietary things, and so I just thought that for this video, this was an appropriate time to bebop in. Also, you guys know I love this top. I've had this top for like the last couple of years, and anytime I can show my arms, I might be talking with my arms a lot because, hey, also I snagged my braid. So I guess jumping in, the reason why I'm doing this is because I've been asked a few times lately what kind of eating style or diet I follow. And I've talked a little bit about this over on my Patreon, probably like more in depth than I've talked about it over here. And so today I wanted to just hop in and talk about it. So if you've been following my channel for a long time, you know that I grew up a dancer. I was like a full-on dancer, like everything, jazz, ballet, tap, hip hop, lyrical, point, hip hop, all of it, right? So like for real, I did it professionally in LA from like the time I was a little girl. Obviously I wasn't professional when I was a little girl, but then until like basically right before I started YouTube, because that's a whole separate story. But I had come home from living in Singapore with Dan. We were working for Universal Studios, and we came back and I had a serious knee injury as well as all my old previous injuries that had just kind of piled up. I was like, what am I going to do? And then there enters YouTube. But point being, I danced for a long time. And I say that because I believe that dancing is a part of what contributed to my eating disorder. You guys know, if you, like I said, have been watching my channel for a long time, that I did struggle with an eating disorder for not that long, but a couple of years. And I don't really need to go on the tangent about that. Praise the Lord. I'm fully healed now. I was going to say I believe, because also I believed I was fine when I was struggling with my eating disorder. So you're always like, who knows what blind spots I'm missing? But I feel like I have such a great, healthy relationship with food now. Now, I really care about health. And I know people have talked before about, like orthorexia being a thing. I don't feel like I fall in that camp. I feel like I genuinely just care about putting good fuel in my body, and specifically food that I feel like God created to be food. That's kind of a big thing. I was talking to a friend of mine who's was also a fellow home birther, and we were just saying like, yeah, I don't even feel like we're into any kind of crazy diet. We just like to eat food and that we feel like God intended to be food, not super processed junk. And I do eat processed food, and that's kind of where I go back to. I think I actually have a really healthy relationship with food because I kind of view it as like that 80-20 rule, even though I will say that since I've miscarried, I have been striving for like perfection, but keeping it chill, meaning like it is what it is. I'm doing my best, but like I'm really trying to eat clean and like really tend to my garden. So that being said, with my health journey, I had an eating disorder in my late teens coming out of dancing really. And then I just got really into studying diets and nutrition. And I read all kinds of random diet books like the South Beach diet, but then also actual nutritional books. I've mentioned this before, like the China Study, which is basically a case for veganism. Now I have to throw out there, I only finished it was somewhere in the ballpark of like 50 to 70% of the book. I was reading it so slow because I was really trying to absorb the information. And then I think I jumped ship, like I said, like 70% of the way through the book, and I don't really remember why, but I did. And so point being, I ended up kind of dipping my toes into different, nutritional spheres and kind of trying to gain information, see what I thought about different things. I was a vegetarian for many years. I was vegan for a really short period of time because I did not feel good. I was also a raw foodist for a really short period of time, did not feel good. And then I was a vegetarian for years, very comfortably, very easily. And then I stopped being a vegetarian because I started noticing that I was craving meat. And that's not even something that happened to me like growing up. Like I remember my parents would have to be like, finish your meat. I'd be like, I don't want to. And so when I started craving meat, I was like, whoa, something is happening here. Anyways, I'm not even necessarily trying to give my whole history. I'm really trying to get to the point, which is what a few of you guys have asked. And that's how I eat now. And the way that I eat now, and I've mentioned this like very briefly, but obviously I wanted to expound on it, is intuitive eating, basically, that has been informed by the Weston A. Price, Nourishing Traditions, pro-metabolic community as well. So that whole like train of thought, that whole way of eating. Weston A. Price, he was a dentist that I guess like went around the world in the early 1900s and studied different civilizations and their diets and how they ate. And so he went to all kinds of different places, and there really isn't, I was just talking to a friend about this too, there isn't really one ancestral way of eating, because obviously it depends on your heritage and where you live in the world. Like I can't get the same food all year round that like a friend who lives in Hawaii could get. It's a totally different climate. And so, but the Weston A. Price way of eating is kind of like ancestral in the sense that it's like, it was pre-industrial revolution as things were starting to kind of make their way into different countries, different ways of eating. And so he was really able to give his like analysis on different cultures' health and how they ate. And so that book is really interesting. It's heavy. I'm listening through it right now for like, I feel like I've listened through that book like 5 times because it's so dense in information, and I fall asleep half the time listening to it. So then I pick up like another piece when I wake up or whatever. But that book is very heavy on animal products. So animal protein and milk, cheese, meat, all of that. Bone broth is a really big thing that they hit on. And same thing, like the pro-metabolic community it's very similar way of eating to nourishing traditions. There are differences, and even within the pro-metabolic community, like different people say different things. But if I had to lump everything in that general camp, that's kind of where I'm at. Now, I have differences, and this is where we go back to like the intuitive way of eating. I do kind of follow my appetite and my gut a little bit, meaning in nourishing traditions and even in the pro-metabolic community, there's a lot of people that are like anti-vegetable, which I know sounds really weird. They have their reasons. I've heard them all out for it, all their studies, all of their observances of these different communities. But when we go back to intuitively eating, I don't vibe with that. Like I'm not about to cut out all my vegetables to just eat animal products. Like it doesn't vibe with me at all. I love vegetables. I love fruit. They're all into fruit too, but I just eat it when I feel like it. And that's really kind of the point, is like I hear them and their points and their reasoning around why they don't feel like certain vegetables in particular are that great for us. And, you know, some vegetables are like newer to the human diet and we're kind of like just invented basically, like bred or grown within the last like 100 or so years. I hear them, but mostly what I've done with that information is I've like stored it away in the back of my mind for if I don't feel like eating veggies. So if I'm not in a veggie mood, I'm not going to force it, because intuitively, I'm not in a veggie mood, so I'm not going to force it. But then B, now I have all these other people presenting this information as to why they think certain vegetables and too much like vegetable intake can actually cause a problem in your body and with your digestive tract and your hormones. And they think too much fiber can actually be a problem. And it's like, that's one thing I've really learned from consuming a lot of different nutritional information over the years. And this is where we go kind of even to my worldview in general, right? I always say like, I'm not a relativist, but I kind of am, but I'm not. People come out with different opinions. People can look at the same stuff and come out with a different opinion. People do their own experiments and come out with different results. It is truly incredible to read different dietary books and different science and see the different results people get. That's kind of one of my things on a side note, you know, in the last couple of years when people got kind of mad at me for talking about the science on things going on around the world and like not as what they deemed to be a respectful manner. And I'm just thinking like, man, I'm sorry. We go back to like being standpoint epistemology, like my viewpoint. But from my viewpoint, being someone that grew up in Los Angeles, in the entertainment industry, I not only have seen how things can be twisted in the media, how one thing can be filmed and then it can be presented in another way and things can be repackaged. I mean, there's like, I've heard people joke before that like when someone wins a Best Actor award, for example, or a Best Actress award at like the Oscars or whatever, it's not even really the actor that should be winning, it's the editor, because so much can be done in editing. And so I say that combined with I've just read too many nutritional books to know that people become very firm and convinced on the science that they're very firm and convinced on. And I I just think that everybody, it's like, yes, we're all the same. Obviously, we're all humans. We're all the same. But I also think everybody's different. I think that trauma that people go through, I think that the state that their mother was in when they were born, I think that the way that they ate growing up, I just think so many things play into a person's health that I don't know that I believe in a one size fits all. And that kind of backs up to like I said, not to get too much into it right now, but everything that's happened in the last couple years, I don't actually believe in a one size fits all in regards to all of that either. And like I said, once you just see how things can be presented in media, it switches your view a little bit as well, or it can switch your view. It switched my view in terms of like just like trusting media because it's media. Here's the other thing is like lots of people can be divided on health issues. So in terms of what we were referencing, it's like there were so many doctors, like thousands of doctors that have signed different letters over the last 2 years stating like with their experience and their degrees, why they do not agree with the path that different countries' health organizations have gone down, or even like global health organizations do the paths that they have gone down. And so I say all of that to say diet. I'm very much an intuitive eater because of all of these things. So I consume information. I see what people have to say. I weigh it out. I see what makes sense in my gut. And then ultimately there is this level of like what feels right for me? I feel like this is what I'm going to do. And that just is how I kind of am. So a lot of you guys, when you've asked like, what diet do you follow? Like, what are you doing? That's the answer to that. It's a combination of intuitive eating and pro-metabolic nourishing traditions type stuff. Now, I will say one blatant thing that I've pretty much cut out of my diet in the last, well, honestly, since I miscarried, I like 100% cut it out. I have hardly consumed any. Like on my birthday, we went out to dinner at my favorite Mexican place in town. It was so good. And I definitely consumed this there. But anyways, what I was going to say is polyunsaturated fatty acids, or you'll hear people call them PUFAs. And basically those are plant oils, like seed oils, really. That's what it is. So like I eat olive oil, but seed oils like canola oil or soybean oil or safflower oil or sunflower oil, like all of those oils are basically, this is kind of the gist of the argument, they're products of the Industrial Revolution. They're not oils that we ever consumed until we had massive machines that could like do the processing fast enough and cheap enough for all of us to have it. And it was just faster, cheaper, easier. But all throughout human history prior to that, those were not the kind of fats that we were consuming. And now like so many of us, most of our food is covered in that kind of fat. Pretty much all processed food you'll buy at the store is entirely cooked in like soybean oil or safflower. Safflower is one that I always see. Safflower and sunflower. Because it sounds so good. You're like, it's just sunflower seed oil. Obviously, this is all opinion. Who knows? Maybe it is good. But I am at the point where I don't believe it's good for us. And part of the reason I don't believe it's good for us is like the people that I'm looking at and taking advice from. A lot of these people that say that are like super buff, in shape people. And I'm like, I want to get strong. Or they're women who previously struggled with like fertility issues and stuff like that, irregular periods, all of that don't anymore. And so I realize, because I've read enough literature, that those types of stories do exist within like a lot of different dietary categories and ways of eating. But that's kind of part of what's brought me to this place, including the Nourishing Traditions book and talking about his findings and all of that. But this went off into 32 different directions. I just wanted to throw that on there at the end because I realized this was a long answer to say I'm an intuitive eater. And I just thought I'd give you more of a specific example there and say that I don't eat seed oils and I avoid PUFAs now pretty much all of the time. You guys know I have dealt with chronic pain for a very long time. I will say that since I miscarried, now a lot changed since I miscarried. And honestly, who knows, right? You don't really ever know. But the last year of my life was so crazy and so painful and stressful. And after I miscarried, I pretty much immediately snapped back into like all of my old health habits that I had control over. So some of them I don't have control over because we're still settling into our life here. Like we're really not fully settled in. We're way more settled in than we were like 4 months ago. But our life in Nashville was so much more rooted and settled, like our home and all of that. So some of it I don't have control over, but the things that I had control over, like all my supplementation, I immediately went back on it, and literally I immediately cut out PUFAs, because that's a really big thing that a lot of these people talk about, is how damaging that can be. And I really am a big believer that if you've been doing one thing for a while that has not been working, try something else. And I will say that, like I said, I don't know what it is, but since I miscarried, I have felt like the best physically that I felt, I don't even know, in a long time, like mentally, physically, just everything. So I'm really happy and pleased with the choice to be back on my supplementation, because, side note, that's another thing in the pro-metabolic community, they really don't believe in supplements. And they talk about this in Nourishing Traditions as well. And I hear them and I get them. They talk about not liking like individual vitamins to basically be separated by themselves and then sold as if, like, not literally sold, but yeah, sold, told to people like, this is the vitamin. They're like, no, it's not. The vitamin is complex and it comes with a bunch of cofactors. And I hear them and I get that. I think, like I've mentioned, miscarrying, it spooked me out. I had been on my supplements before and I wasn't when I miscarried. And part of the reason I wasn't was because of what I had said, hearing all this new information around, like, maybe I do need to back off on the supplements a little bit, give that a try. But then also it was a little bit of like laziness and overwhelm. Like, I just didn't want to get it sorted. And I've been so overwhelmed with just like everything. Like I said, getting into the house, setting life back up. So I just didn't. And so after I miscarried, it really spooked me out. And I was like, okay, I am immediately going back on my supplements, and I'm adding a couple new ones that I had learned about throughout the year. Because even though this whole community is kind of like low key, not anti-supplements, but in some ways, there are other supplements that they promote. So I ended up bringing on some of those, like Shilajit. I take Shilajit now. I also take desiccated beef liver vitamins, although we recently did buy beef liver and like chopped it up and put it in the freezer. And when I'm out of my pills, I am going to try taking it that way, because a lot of people do it that way. And then the rest were other things that I had already, and I also implemented vitamin E. But the other vitamins were all things I was already on, including methylated folate. This is kind of a side note, but I was told by a holistic doctor maybe like 15 years ago that I have an MTHFR gene mutation. That's something that's also highly debated on in that whole community, like as to whether it's even real, whether you can solve it with your food, which a lot of them believe you can. And so I've been taking methylated folate for like 15 years or something like that. And I stopped basically in this last year when I stopped all of my supplements because of all of the reasons I said, the craziness, everything. And so when I miscarried, I immediately cut all the PUFAs. We stopped eating out, no more eating out. I've eaten out like twice since I've miscarried or something like that. Like I just am not doing it. And like I said, I immediately went back on my supplementations, and I feel so much better. Like just those moves of like being on my supplements, not eating out and eating PUFAs, I feel so much better. And so that's kind of where I'm at right now. That was a long-winded answer to say, like, I just wanted to give you a picture of what I really meant. So I didn't just go, I'm into intuitive eating. It's like, I wanted to explain kind of how I got to this point and really what I'm kind of navigating. So I'd say it's intuitive eating first, kind of Nourishing Traditions, Weston A. Price, pro-metabolic in the background of that. So yeah, I don't even know. That's pretty much it. I just wanted to hop in here and give a little chat, give a little update, and now we're going to hop back into the rest of the day in my life video, and that's pretty much it. So yeah. All right, so we are on a roll with food, and on this day I wanted to make some hard-boiled eggs. I love having hard-boiled eggs just around for like a snack and extra protein. So I cooked them up and let them cool, and then I decided I wanted to make some soup. So I took this fond bone broth, and this was my first time ever trying their beef bone broth. I have to say, it was amazing. I'm a big fond bone broth fan, if you guys haven't figured that out at this point. By the way, I do have a discount code for fond, so I will leave that down in the info box if you want to check that out. A lot of bone broths can be kind of bland tasting, and theirs are just delicious. Anyways, I put butter in the pot, and then I added in some diced white onions as well as some mushrooms. Now, some of these mushrooms were just regular button mushrooms that I had diced up, and some were, I believe those are shiitake that I had in the freezer. I will say the shiitake ended up tasting super weird and the button mushrooms tasted amazing. But once I had cooked them up, then I put my bone broth in. I was kind of inspired by a Japanese soup that I saw on Pinterest, but really it was kind of my own thing too. And obviously the flavors from the fond bone broth, you know, brought the flavor. So I cooked that up, and then I added some chopped cilantro in at the end, because why not? I love cilantro. And I have to say, this soup was amazing. It felt so warming and nourishing, and I loved it. And then, by the way, when I'm done with my fond bone broth, I always save the mason jars because I can pretty much always find a use for them. So at this point, my hard-boiled eggs had cooled down, so I decided to make some egg salad. I really enjoy egg salad, but I find myself making it differently pretty much every time I make it. So this time I started off by dicing up some celery for some crunch and salt, and then I decided to dice up some apples for some sweet and more crunch, and also just more bulk. I also chopped up some onions as well as some chives from my garden. And then I mashed up my hard-boiled eggs like so. Then I added in a couple scoops of my homemade avocado mayonnaise. And then I stirred everything together and added all of my toppings to the mix. I also added a little bit of salt and pepper, obviously. Then I toasted up some of my homemade sourdough bagels, which I hopefully will be making a video on at some point soonish in life. We'll see. A bunch of you guys have asked for it, and feel free to let me know if you would like to see that video as well. Then I made up a little plate for Logan with some egg salad, a little bit of leftover guacamole, some diced kiwis, some diced cheese, and some cassava chips for the guac. And then I had my egg salad sandwich with a kiwi on the side, and I believe I also had some guacamole because I love guacamole. All right, so now we're gonna move on to this drink that Noelle Covry, who I was inspired by to make it, calls a vanilla cloud. So I start off by separating my egg yolk, and I put my egg yolk in a mug and I stir it together with some cane sugar. Apparently the cane sugar helps the egg yolk to not oxidize and not cook when you pour in the milk. Now granted, the milk that I add in is just like lightly warmed, or at least that's the goal, but I had warmed it on the stovetop, and then I threw it in my frother to froth up. Then I put in a little bit of vanilla extract, a little pinch of salt, and oftentimes I do a little cinnamon as well. Sometimes I add a little cocoa, but I let that mix up till it was nice and frothy, and then I poured it in my mug over my egg yolk and sugar mixture. And I stirred it up, as you can see, and it's so delicious. Logan loves splitting this drink with me, and I find that it's just a cozy treat when I want it. Like, it really hits the spot. All right, guys, so that is it for this video, and I really hope that it was able to encourage you or inspire you in some way in your day. If you're having a hard day, I just want to encourage you to just keep swimming. I'm praying for all of you, and I hope that you have a beautiful rest of your week wherever you are. I will, God willing, see you back here soon with another new video. All right, bye, guys.